celebration of literary arts for DMAC. And so just to kind of give a quick rundown for the day so we can get started. I'll introduce Ross. He's going to come and read to us for a little bit, and then he's going to open it to audience Q&A. So as he's reading, if he has questions about poetry, essays, process, you name it, Ross will be happy to chat with you about it, right? And we'll probably try to keep it under an hour, so we can have time, if you are so inclined, to get your books signed. So after the reading, we have 3 books. We have a book of poetry and a book of essays that we're giving out to the crowd, kind of while supplies last. So if you want a free book and get it signed by Ross, get one, and we'd be happy to do so. Cool. All right. So starting today, we have the honor of hosting Ross Gay, who's the author of 4 books of poetry, Against Which, Bringing a Shovel Down, Beholding, which is the winner of the PEN American Literary Gene Stein Award, and Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, winner of the 2015 National Book Critics Circle Award, the 2016 Kingsley Tufts Poetry Award, and nominated for the National Book Award. In fact, Bill Ross just got off a plane just a few hours ago, and he came right to our campus, which was a gracious act in itself, for which we're grateful. This isn't Ross's first time at DMAC. Actually, this isn't his first time in this room. This room's back wall. Ross has been to DMAC 3 times since the start of our literary festival, and though he's currently tapped to be the keynote speaker for Poetry Blues this weekend, which, little plug, it's at Grandview College, Friday night and all day Saturday, free, open to the public. Ross will be there, as well as like many other amazing poets, so check it out. Ross actually graciously made special accommodations in his schedule just to come here for us this afternoon, for now his 4th visit to the college, and a 5th. Our punch card is free. So you just come by and make it happen. We're overjoyed and delighted by his return since, in addition to poetry, Ross has released 3 essay collections, the Book of Delights, which is the New York Times bestseller, Inciting Joy, and his newest collection, the Book of More Delights. For his insightful observations about noticing beauty in the small things, and dedicating himself to the practice of appreciating things that often go unnoticed, Ross has received multiple prizes, including fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation, Kave Kana, and Brad Loaf's Writers Conference. He's also a sports fan and a founding editor of the online sports magazine Some Call It Ballin'. He's also a community activist and a founding board member of the Bloomington Community Orchard, a nonprofit, volunteer-run, free fruit for all, food justice, and joy project. He's also a creative writing instructor or professor at Indiana University, but today he's traveled far and wide to be with us. So let's give him a round of applause.
It's good to see you all. How you doing? Good. I'm going to read, I think when I was here last time I read something new. So I'm going to read some new things, which are totally ridiculous. I've been writing, this dog came into my life, dog named Gussie. And I have been writing these plays where there's a character named man or person and a character named dog. See how that goes. But I'm going to start off with this book called Beholding. So Beholding is a book-length poem. It focuses entirely on a move in the 1980 NBA Finals by Dr. J. How many of you know who Dr. J is? Okay. So for those of you who don't, there's you probably know who Michael Jordan is. And Michael Jordan, I think you could say, is a descendant of Dr. J in stylistically and other things. Is that correct? I think. Anything else you need to know about this? You might not get everything because it's a little bit generational, but maybe not. And there's an epigraph. An epigraph is like a quote or a line before the book starts, or a poem or something. It's before the book starts. And this is a book by someone named Christina Sharp, and her book is called In the Wake on Blackness and Being. And the quote is, "To be held, to behold." Beholding, April 4th, 2015 until today. And you might have noticed there's nowhere to go. Bless you. The wind cutting little eddies at your collarbones and behind your ear as Dr. J drives from the foul line extended to the baseline defended valiantly by Mark Landsberger, who, in this poem, despite the doofy urge to make him so, is not allegorical, but is rather simply a hard-working journeyman ball player with decent athleticism and size and a floppy mop of dusty blonde hair who got caught up in the gust, sliding his size 16s quick so that Doc, after catching the ball at the elbow and taking that one hard dribble toward the baseline, where the dunk would usually commence, could not access the paint, or the lane, or the key, which is what we call the area nearest the goal. Oh, it's like a Final Four poem. I'm reading. The spirit of Final Four. Which is what we call the area nearest the goal, the key, which in this case is an iron hole drawn in space, and therefore implies a window, though the key makes it also a door. But Landsberger, it seemed, was trying to keep shut, and so Doc left. He left his feet, which means more or less jumping with the ball with nowhere to go, and which were warned against by coaches from day one for the ensuing requisite stupid pass, or more simply, though no less stupid, travel, also called walking, which the leaping often leads to. Keep your feet! Again and again, which makes the leaping, leaving your feet, sound sacrificial. The way in certain places, certain countries, or countries inside of countries, you must leave by foot with nowhere to go, which there is. And Doc, you should note, after the one dribble, clasps the ball with only his right hand, without once at all in any shape or form using the left, which, among other things, friends, differentiates this move from all the descendant moves. Kevin Durant, Dwayne Wade, Steph, and Giannis, and Harden, and Kawhi. Yes, Bron too, I shall not be moved. And using only one hand, which is amazing, but not yet miraculous, more a physical and therefore genetic fact, thanks Ma and Pa Irving. Doc's hand becomes an octopus gripping the ball, nothing like prey, and with that ball snugged in his mitt, Doc maybe kind of sort of thought something like, I'm going to put this schmuck, the schmuck in this case being Landsberger, though do not, please, revert to a simplistic allegorization of the journeyman, which word I repeat advisedly, on a poster. Though schmuck is a word I'd be surprised to hear Doc say, and the word posterize, common usage, posterize his ass, you might be thinking is a bit of an anachronism in this poem, in this move, which ostensibly occurred in the 1980 NBA Finals, though we all know that nothing happens only when it happens. We all know nothing happens only when it happens. Emerging more in the epic, which in the NBA lasts 3 to 5 years, following Doc's retirement, Neek and Jordan, Hakeem the Dream and Clyde the Glide, Barkley the Glove, and remember Sean Kemp?
Yeah.
Though Doc probably thought it anyway, visionary that he was, when will they verb what I keep doing to these schmucks, especially Bill fucking Walton? R.I.P. Driving from the foul line extended toward the baseline as the unsuspecting Landsberger, who did a fine job of shuffling his size 16s and not holding, keeping Irving from the key, and who must for a scant and fleeting moment have felt a degree of pride when Doc, after that hard dribble right, left his feet with nowhere to go. Billy Cunningham on the sideline, his hands on his hips, his sport coat thrown open, a few strands of hair stuck to his moist pink brow, and almost smiling as Doc began sailing out of bounds over the baseline. And Landsberger, a solid leaper, skied and foreclosed the possibility of Doc sneaking a shot in this side of the basket, by which I mean dunking probably quite hard, by putting his hand against the backboard, a big door swinging shut. At which fine and commendable defensive effort, Irving simply decided in the air to knock on other doors by soaring more. Have you ever decided anything in the air? Turtling his head into his chest so as not to bash it against the backboard, flying like that, in fact, now behind the basket and backboard, where Kareem, A good help defender, wait a second. That's wrong. Kareem, one of the best defenders of all time, 5-time NBA All-Defensive First Team, 6-time NBA All-Defensive Second Team, 6 MVPs, sorry MJ, not to mention, which means it requires mentioning, Kareem was one of those Negroes they changed the rules for, banning the dunk for years from the NCAA, which is to say banning emphatic and exquisite flight, which maybe explains the wise and sort of tired eyes of Kareem, one of the best basketball players of all time, who had slid to also cut off the baseline, which he accomplished, but found himself now looking into the sky directly out of bounds, which his own suddenly unfamiliar body must have been telling him was so weird. This is so weird. Looking and looking like this, his hands extended timidly, a silver maple's branches creaking and swaying in a hurricane, for Doc was amongst the trees, as we call the big men, like Kareem, the trees, who reside mostly in the lane, or in the key, growing there, rooting. The thousands of fans now holding their breath, looking into the sky, some of their hands reaching out instinctively toward their neighbors beside them, or their palms instinctively laying on the shoulders before them, or forearms shoved gently into a wrist or hip beside them. A few arms of strangers are suddenly locked as if going for a stroll. The whole of the Philadelphia spectrum become a kind of dew-glistened web, shivering its gems in the gales as Irving went higher and now began to extend his right hand in a precise arc, beginning precisely above his head, painting a broad and precise circle, not unlike Leonardo's Vitruvian Man and his hula hoop of perfect proportions, if that little naked man wasn't little. Or naked. And was palming a basketball. And was flying through the trees. And I find myself again and again with my arm making the perfectly impossible circle again and again as I watch this clip on YouTube, frame by frame, clumsily on a computer with gummy keys and a post-it note covering the eye hole scrawled "Discipline" on April 5th, 2015 at 1:48 a.m. again and again, thinking, what am I looking at? What am I seeing? Back to the first long step toward the baseline, the slight contact with Landsberger, the leap. Again, long step, contact, leap. Again, long step, contact, leap. Again, long step, contact, leap. And I noticed this time in the background, which is, granted, hazy, this being old footage and my eyes a bit roomy for the now nearly 2 hours studying this clip, I noticed at about the foul line, Silk, aka Jamal Wilkes, who, for the record, Coach Wooden, on the record, said was his best player ever at UCLA. Not Kareem and, oh, fuck forever, Bill Walton. Bless him. It is worthwhile to spend at least a moment with the name Silk, among the finest basketball nicknames ever, implying an ease and fluidity of movement, implying a difficult thing, a painful thing made to look easy, a fiber prized for its softness, its smoothness on the skin, gathered from captive worms fed mulberry leaves. My court name was Beast, for what it's worth. And after a summer league game on the court at 10th and Lombard, where those in the know would slide through a gap in a grimace in the wrought iron gate to get in, a court that would be in time shut down in the most heinous of ways, removing the rims, the backboards lonely as gravestones, because of complaints to the city from the condo owners across the street who did not want to hear, God forbid, all that Negro gathering and celebration and care and delight every goddamn weekend morning, all that frolic and tumult, all that flight. Why can't they just go someplace else? A slightly older opponent told me, holding my hand and shoulder and pulling me close, he was holding me. beneath the stately oaks overhanging the court, looking kindly down on us, and time to time blocking a high arcing shot and wishing a leap or two upon the ex-ballers on the sidelines, reading the Philadelphia Inquirer, sipping coffee, debating and laughing or acting stupid like refs making calls. Oh yeah, he walked his ass off. The oaks dappling the old heads and their discourse. Best line of verse I'll ever write. His shirt was soaked through, staring at me to be sure I was listening, which I was, then is now. You ain't no beast. You ain't no beast. You're a man. You hear me? I'm gonna stop there. And I'm gonna read maybe a couple of these. Here's another basketball. So this is a book called The Book of Delights. One day in 2016 or 15, I was walking around and having I was in a moment of delight. I was having a nice day, a nice moment, and I caught myself. I was like, "Whoa, this is nice. I should write a little essay about it." And then it occurred to me, that's wrong. It was occurred to me. Something blew through and said, "Do it every day for a year. Write a short essay every day for a year about something that delights you." So that's what this is. I didn't write them every single day, but I wrote them a lot of days. And they just have titles, that indicate what they're about. But this is called The Martha Life. My buddy Pat and I went to shoot around at the basketball courts in Martha today. I read about things other than basketball. We were warming up, shooting 12-footers or doing slow spin moves and crossovers when a young guy from the other side of the court swaggered toward us, holding a ball on his hip, the light gleaming in his earrings, and he challenged us to a 2-on-2, pointing his thumb to himself and back to his buddy who was draining threes from the corner. We agreed and went on to kick the shit out of them 21-0. That's a horrible figure of speech. I leave it in only to say the violence we so easily speak. We got more baskets than they did. That they were only 12 years old is irrelevant, given as this was their home court. And they even had a crowd watching. A little girl who, when one of the kids shouted to the guys, "They're kicking our butts," said, "Yeah, I hope so. They're grown men." I have to remember when I was writing that. When I was playing with my buddy Pat, he at some point was like, "Yo, maybe we should let them score." He's 12-year-olds. Couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Everyone knows you can go on a run, Anyone can go on a run. This is called nicknames. I'm writing in a notebook with the words "pay attention" on the front of it, which is a cousin to another notebook in my bag with the words "pay attention."